Hi guys, in this video I'm going to be sharing my 7 key stretching and flexibility tips. Now, being flexible not only helps us in our workouts by helping us move in better and safer movement patterns, but it is super important for our day-to-day life. So if we think about simple things like tying our shoelaces, getting down and up off the ground, maybe reaching up and twisting for something in a high shelf, bending over to pick something up, or even just sitting in a nice posture, all of these things are made so much easier and safer by being flexible. Now, stretching has also been shown to help relieve pain. So you can get rid of all those other methods and maybe solve your headaches or lower back pain by simply stretching. Now, remember, I'm releasing a brand new video every Wednesday sharing workouts, yoga, training and fitness tips, beat workouts, and maybe even some lifestyle hacks. So make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss any videos from me. Now, let's get into my stretching tips. Tip number 1 is consistency. Now, when it comes to stretching and especially improving your flexibility, the more often you stretch, the better results you're going to get. Now, I usually suggest to stretch for a little bit every day rather than doing one big stretching session a week. Now, your muscles actually have something called muscle memory, so they're pretty good at remembering things they've recently done. So if we think about our workouts, maybe you're aiming to get stronger, you want to run further, or you're learning a skill, we usually try and consistently do our training sessions, so maybe at least every 3rd day. After 3 days, our body usually goes through something called detraining. So all the benefits that we kind of trained for during that session get forgotten, and we might even start to become a little bit weaker, a little bit less fit. So the aim is to try and at least stimulate the muscles before that detraining happens again. Now, for stretching, if we think about stretching every day, it's really easy for our muscles to remember what it felt like to stretch yesterday rather than trying to remember what happened a week ago. So key guys, a little bit of stretching every day. Easy ways to incorporate this is maybe doing a 15-minute stretch in the morning when you wake up, or maybe stretching in front of the TV at night before you go to bed, or incorporating stretching before or after your workouts. Tip number 2, make sure you're working on your flexibility and mobility. Now, yes, there is a difference between the two. Flexibility is the ability of your muscle to move passively through a range of motion. So if we think about the stretch or the length of a muscle, whereas mobility is the ability of a joint to move actively through a range of motion. So if we think about something like a shoulder joint, the ability of your arm to move around and the ball and socket to move freely as you do an arm circle. Now, both of these are really important and they work hand in hand. So if you're trying to stretch a muscle, you might not get the full benefit of that stretch if the joint doesn't allow that movement. So when we're working flexibility and mobility, we want to make sure we're doing things like static stretching, active stretching, and even mobility exercises like these. Tip number 3, make sure you hold your stretches for at least 30 seconds. Now, we want to make sure we give our muscles enough time to relax and release into our stretches to make sure we're improving our flexibility. Your muscles have a stretch reflex, so if you stretch too quickly and too aggressively, they actually protect themselves by contracting. So we want to be able to bypass this stretch reflex by stretching gently and make sure we're giving those muscles enough time to know that it's safe and that we're working on that flexibility. I recommend to hold your stretches for 5 nice, long, deep breaths. This is usually around 30 seconds. Now, the best part about counting your breaths is that you don't have to sit there watching the clock ticking down. You can just close your eyes and really focus on your stretch. Now, if you do have a little bit more time, I do suggest to try and hold your stretch for 10 long, deep breaths, so more towards the minute mark. This is going to really allow your muscles to relax and deepen into the stretch, really improving your flexibility. Now, all this talk about breathing, this brings me into my 4th tip, and this is remember to breathe. Now, it can be so common, especially if you are quite inflexible and you find stretching uncomfortable, to hold your breath. Now, as soon as you hold your breath, your body goes into fight or flight mode. It really starts to tense up and the stretch becomes really uncomfortable. The best thing to do is to concentrate on your breathing. Nice big breath in through your nose, out through your mouth. This allows your body to know that it's okay and to start to relax into the stretch. The best part about taking deeper breaths is that it also relaxes our nervous system and oxygenates the body. So this is super beneficial after a workout, even first thing in the morning when you wake up to get energized, or last thing at night to really help relax your body before you go to sleep. Tip number 5, stretch twice. Now, I know this can be difficult, especially if you're rushed for time, but if you do have the luxury of spending a little bit more time on some of your stretching sessions, I do recommend to try and hold each stretch twice through. Now, remember muscle memory. If you think about the first time your body goes into a stretch, it's just trying to relax and release and really memorize that movement. Now, if you come out for a couple of seconds, give your body a nice big shake, and then move back into that stretch, your body already knows where it's been, which means you can normally push a little bit deeper into that stretch, really working on improving your flexibility. Tip number 6, look at your body as a whole. Now, usually we can get caught in the trap of just thinking we have tight hamstrings or tight pecs. We actually need to make sure we're looking at the body in a bigger picture. Now, each part of the body is influenced by another part. It's like a giant chain reaction. So if you have tight hamstrings, they could actually be tight because you've got a tight lower back, tight arches in your feet, or even tight hip flexors. So when it comes to stretching, we really want to make sure we're stretching as many muscle groups as we can and not just focusing all of our energy on one muscle group because we think that area is tight. Now, a great way to tackle this when you're doing your stretching routine is trying to work from the bottom of the body up or from the top of the body down. So if you kind of just work your way down the chain, you know that you're going to be targeting every area that you need to. And my final tip, number 7, equipment. Now, equipment will really help to take your stretching and flexibility to the next level. I'm only going to focus on a few pieces that I really think are a great addition to your stretching routine. Piece of equipment number 1 is a foam roller. Now, this is super popular. You've probably seen them at a lot of studios or gyms or maybe even on YouTube, and they are a great way to improve the elasticity of muscles. Now, if we think about a muscle belly, around that muscle, there's something called fascia. Now, fascia is almost like a glad wrap or a cling wrap that is wrapped around the muscle to keep everything together. This fascia can actually become really tight, and this can inhibit or prevent our muscles stretching further. So when we use a foam roller, this really helps to massage and release the fascia so it's able to stretch even further. Now, just a little side note here, fascia can actually become really dehydrated if we're not drinking enough water. And when this happens, this can cause it to tighten up and become quite stiff. So make sure you are drinking enough water as well and hydrating those muscles and fascia. Our second piece of equipment is a trigger ball, and this is great for releasing muscle knots and any tension we might feel in the muscle belly. Now, when our muscles contract, we have muscle fibers that run parallel to each other. Sometimes these fibers can get a little bit stuck and knotted up, creating muscle knots. And sometimes these knots can be quite painful to touch and they can stop the flexibility of our muscle. So a trigger ball is a great way to massage that knot and help those fibers to run parallel with each other again. So we use the trigger ball by firstly finding our muscle knot, placing the ball on the knot and then gently massaging either in circular or up and down motions to release that tension. Now, it can be a little bit painful to start off with, so you can start with a softer ball like a tennis ball and then slowly work your way up to a firmer ball, something like a hockey ball or even a professional trigger ball. Our third piece of equipment is a cushion. So I'm sitting on one right now. Now, if you don't have a firm cushion, you can also use something like a couple of folded up towels, and we can use this as a support or a prop for our stretching. Now, especially if you're a little less flexible, a cushion can be a great prop to use to make stretches more comfortable to hold. Our final piece of equipment is a strap, or you can also use something like a skipping rope or a long towel. Now, this is a great addition, especially if you feel like some stretches are really hard to hold and you need a little extra pull. You can use your strap or your rope. Charlie's come to join us for the outro, haven't you? Thanks for coming. So there you have it, guys, my 7 stretching and flexibility tips. Now, remember to be gentle and most importantly, be patient when it comes to working on your flexibility. We all come from different backgrounds, we all have different workout routines, and we all have different genetics. So we're going to respond differently and at different rates to our stretching routines. So don't compare yourself to anyone else. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you were able to get some useful tips out of this video. If you want to see more from me, remember to hit subscribe. Thanks again, and I can't wait to see you next time, and hopefully Charlie too. Yeah, see ya.